Wow, close but no cigar. Hello. I looked out the window today and I thought,
Oh, Canada.
but it wasn't. It's just the United States looks like Canada right now. Wow, how familiar. Everybody's out there, they're all like dressed out to here and they're all bowed over. You look and it's like looking at bears in the snow. It makes me think if you give a bear a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you give him a snow shovel, he can shovel your snow forever. You can buy as many fish as you want. Just give him one whenever he gets antsy, Russell. Anyway, I'll talk today in the latest episode of Mything Persons, about the most persistent myth in our modern arsenal, our urban myth, urban legend arsenal. Yeah, the vampire. I'm going to ask you to ignore all the interpretations you've seen that are so cool, the Lost Boys, Buffy, whatever, you know. Just let all that go for a minute. Let's go back to the original Gothic horror novel, Dracula, written by Bram Stoker. He and Mary Shelley, who created Frankenstein's monster, invented the Gothic horror genre. So called because the architecture of the times, the pop culture, was neo-Gothic. Yeah. So anyway, feels good. Kids, as long as your skin still works, you're blessed. So anyway, where does this vampire legend come from that Bram Stoker ran into and decided, hey, I'm going to write a book about it. I'm going to make this I'm going to tie together this Transylvanian nobleman that I know his story, just heard his story about the Voivode, or the Voivode, whatever it is, that put 20,000 people on stakes lining his driveway so that, I guess he could set them on fire at night so that he could see the road, but whatever it was, when the phrase raised a mighty stink comes up, I think, or in the dictionary, that's his picture. So anyway, so Bram Stoker combined several traditions to create his Dracula, right? He was a Transylvanian nobleman who had been brought low by God somehow. That's not really explained. Well, here's the explanation for it. In Transylvania and some other parts nearby, there are myths. There is a specific myth that there are creatures that roam the night and suck blood. Yeah. These creatures are called vampires. I don't know what they call them there. I haven't been, but this is what I understand. And the vampires have a specific origin. You need an origin story. I've said this before. You need a credible origin story. Their vampires are survivors of the war in heaven. The Jewish scriptures have a book, the Book of Enoch, and then after that the Book of Giants, and then I think in Enoch 2, or maybe Enoch 2 was Giants, I can't remember, but still the point being, these represent, one's very fragmentary, these represent a tradition that is not considered canon, but there are people in the study of these things that believe that they are very much canon and they are literal truths. How can I know which is right and which is wrong? Lord God, light my path. Not that I understand the minutiae of the religion, but that I do not abuse others in my search. So, there was a war in heaven according to this tradition in Enoch. And from it come angels that went to ground, that went native, that came to earth and hid amongst the population or became kings or perhaps the heads of pantheons like Zeus or Odin. It should be Othin, I think, the way they pronounce it. These creatures then, for whatever reason, drank human blood. They didn't drink everybody's blood, right? Or else they would have killed everybody. So humans are still out there. Different explanations today. I said, let all that stuff go. Let's just go back with Bram Stoker. Let's go back to the original myth that sparked his ideas. So here we go. There was a war in heaven, apparently led by Lucifer, right? And God somehow managed, the universe alive and aware. The whole energy budget of the universe at his command. Was barely able to prevail against a few of the inhabitants of that universe. That seemed unlikely, even if they were the Q. And so they were cast out of heaven, and they fell, long they fell. I think the tradition is 3 days. So heaven must be a long way up or down, or where does gravity go in space? I don't know. But still, you get the idea, sideways, whatever. Now, we have this subsequent myth that this place called hell contains the fallen angels, who are now called devils, right? And now, instead of being bright and glorious creatures, I'm going to talk about that for a second, they are now dark and benighted creatures. Really? That's a little extreme. When you consider that the angels that came to Sodom and Gomorrah, they were angels. I mean, the way it's written, it could have been God himself. But whatever, they looked like ordinary people. They didn't glow. They didn't have big auras around them. They didn't have circular halos around their heads. They were just ordinary human beings. And then the local says, hey, come on out and party. We got a little something for you. Right? They got all mad. Rains of fire, ash from the sky. Just like if an oil field had caught fire, had an explosion, which could have happened then, because there are a lot more volatiles on the surface than there are today when they pumped them all out. Yeah, it's like that. The myth of the Ifrit, the burning fire spirit in the desert, is very rational. Consider there are places in the desert that just used to leak naphtha, and a lightning strike or anything would set them on fire. You'd have like a column of fire that seemed to move as if it were alive. Then if you threw something in it, it would burn it up and consume it like it was a god itself. Oh. Yeah, these things all, well, they often have real physical backgrounds. So, let's take this angel that has fled from being defeated by God. He's still alive somehow, or she's still alive, it's still alive, whatever. And that's kind of scary. So now it goes to ground in the earth, right? Like, lives among the human people, right? Because the hell tradition seems a little odd because we have all these traditions of the fallen angels living among humans, mating with human women, creating the Nephilim, which were theoretically 50-foot tall giant monsters. How'd you come out of a mom? Well, I didn't so much come out of her as I ruptured her. Yeah, I bet. So what those are, the Nephilim, those are attempts to explain the bones in the ground. You come across a brontosaurus skeleton, you're like, wow, what a giant guy that must have been. 50-foot tall. Wait, I'm not sure. It's either Leviathan or Behemoth. One of them is described as an assembly of every single quality of a monster. Couldn't possibly be. But it's a great explanation for why you found a bone bed. Like where water runoff after a disaster had washed the bones of 50 different kinds of animals into one spot and they fossilized there. You uncover something like that, you're thinking like, what the hell? It's a hecontiere. It's 100-handed giant. It's got 100 heads, it's got 100 arms, it's got 100 limbs. Let they who have eyes and ears get a clue. That's where these myths come from. So, no Nephilim, they were the bones of the earth. No Behemoth, no Leviathan, they were just the bones of the earth, and attempts to explain them. Very well done, considering they used their knowledge of the times to explain the prodigies around them. That's called philosophy. That has led to what we now call science, but which is really empirical science, which is a philosophy, a mode of behavior, a mode of approach to life. That's what philosophy is. I know they say it's different things now, but that's because they're quibblers. A lot of quibblers in the world, so nobody's a big thinker anymore. A person like that would have to be a super duper genius, and shut up. So, the angels ran to ground, and then for some reason they have to drink blood. It's the Romanian tradition. They have to drink blood. And they drink blood, and they drink blood, and they drink blood, and they don't kill everybody. You'd think an angel have a powerful thirst. He could like just drain a human and throw him aside and go through a town in a night, right? But no. These guys are very, very specific. They stalk someone. And you see what I mean? So I have a mechanism for this, but I can't prove it. And I'm not going to do any more experiments with vampires. I was tripping balls one time. I hate to admit this. But I was doing 4 kinds of psilocybin, and I don't know, 2 orange barrels, and somebody had smoked peyote with me. So I was able to achieve a separate reality. Read your Carlos Castaneda. And so I was pretty damn high, right? Yeah, remembering that makes me forget what the hell I was talking about. Oh, and I got bitten by a vampire. I was walking home going, we did that, had to be, but vampire jumped out of nowhere and bit me on the neck. And he like took a big drink, and I was like, oh. And I turned around, he let go of me, and he went, I can fly, and he ran and jumped off the bridge, and guess what? He couldn't fly. So, ow, my neck is still bothering me. But the point being, yeah, that's me and vampires. They can't handle the real thing. They can't handle Eshkalar filtered skunk. It's a thing now. I just wish you guys knew how funny that was. But that's all right. You know other things that are funny that I don't even know. So there's a balance. Anyway, so these angels went to ground, and, fallen angels, and apparently hung around with people and then stalked certain people over years sometimes and drank their blood, gradually killed them, right? Didn't do whole villages or towns, though. So they're very, very picky. Like I said, I have a mechanism for all that, but I'm not going to talk about it. The Romanian idea is that if a vampire decided he wanted to stop being a vampire, this fallen angel didn't want to suck blood anymore, he could abstain for X number of years, I don't know how many, and become a mortal human. And then could settle down and raise the children and age naturally and die, and theoretically be accepted back into community heaven. Wow. How about that for rehabilitation, right? So that's the Romanian model for the vampire. It's a fallen angel. They also call them the Watchers. This all comes from Ezekiel and the Book of Giants, which is Ezekiel too, I think. That's, I'm not an expert. I am merely while the gods laugh, the world's vortex in, and some jungle. So that's the real concept of the vampire. Is the vampire is a fallen angel that is a veteran of the war in heaven. That angel came down to earth and hides among us and feeds off us, selected members of the human race, for whatever reason, right? And eventually may come to an epiphany where he says, I ain't gonna drink no blood no more. And then becomes, through process unimaginable to me, immortal again. And can blend back into mortal society. He doesn't have to feel like God's looking over his shoulder, coming for him, going, give me back what you have stolen from me. Right? And this is the concept of the vampire. Everything after that is garbage. Everything after that is garbage. Just bored Hollywood executives coked out of their minds saying, let's call it a vampire, but really it'll be this giant, terrible, awful monster that's immortal. We don't describe it as a demon or a man, but it's sort of got qualities of both, so there's kind of like a demon. How are we going to render that? You render that by not doing it. You tend to the regular tradition. You don't need to postulate all these like weird, fantastical forms of creatures. You already have them. You have an angel. You can do anything you want with an angel. Why are you people limiting yourself to these dumb, childish fantasies? It's beyond me. You can limit yourself to my dumb, childish fantasies, and I can make a living. Buy the Patchworld novels. I'm a hero. I get to write my own narrative. The history through unbiased eyes. So, there is your angel. there is your fallen angel, or your war in heaven, your fallen angel. Your fallen angel going native. Your fallen angel feeding off select members of the human population for years and years and years. And then eventually deciding to make war no more and losing whatever makes it an angel by stopping his feeding on human blood. That's why I have my own idea for this. But at any rate, and then becomes mortal, blends back into the mortal race, and hopefully is assumed back into the community of heaven when he passes away, as all things must. There's your angel. There's your vampire. There's your cycle of existence. From the mouth of God, because I think it's Isaiah 55, 56 maybe, that says that my words go forth from my mouth and do the work for which I intend them, which is easily interpreted as the words of God become angels and do his work in the world. What happens to those angels after they've done their work is never dealt with. Perhaps there was no war in heaven. Perhaps the angels that came to earth and are called the Watchers or vampires were the word of God complete. Now what? It's so powerful it still has independent existence and free will. Now what does it do? Heaven may be a finite place, only certain creatures allow it. What does that mean? Anyway, that's just speculation. The stuff I gave you earlier is real myth and legend from the original source of the vampire legends. There are other blood-sucking creatures in mythologies. There is the Wendigo in the west of the United States. There is the chupacabras in the southwest of the United States, the chupacabra. And there is also a vampire that roams the plains and forests of Africa. And maybe I'll cover one or more of those in times to come. This has been your old pal Eshkalar, giving you a little bit of wokenness about the mythological universe. And now back to reality, which I hope is boring as hell, because isn't that better than being too exciting?